we are again with a guest. We roped somebody else into coming down to the studio, Jeremy. So
this is episode 25.
Yes, it is.
You were supposed to do the remembering of what episode number we are.
Yep, I will. You got it. You did a good job with that.
We have Supervisor Jordanna Mallach here. We made sure to spell her name right beforehand, off air, so that we would have her respect during the episode. And I made a mistake. I gave you a hard time one time because whoever you had on the show didn't know anything about what to expect, but they were good sports.
Yeah.
And I was giving you a hard time about it, but it seems like I've now done that.
Yep. You stole my whole idea. So.
But Jordan is still here, and welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So Jeremy, will say, slyly convinced you to join us here, and you want to support the podcast even though you don't know what it's about. So yeah, we're not talking about the NBA Finals or anything tonight. So
that's good.
We do want to talk about no hot takes on the Miami Heat. Okay, well, there's a term that one of our former guests used to describe that he's not from here originally, and he referred to himself as an interloper, which I still don't feel comfortable saying. Like, even though I was born and raised here, I don't feel like when I was in Vermont, people always referred to people that were born in Vermont as flatlanders. I used to get really mad about that because I'd be like, from the Adirondacks. That's totally anyway. So, are you a native born, or are you an interloper, as a former guest would say? You married it? Okay, that's
married into it.
So we'll now have to come up with a
third term.
Yeah, that.
Okay.
Because I think that's pretty good. I mean, you get a lot of credit for that.
I do. Interestingly enough, I feel like it's definitely broken down some barriers because of who I'm married to, and I have access to a perspective. And it gives me like a certain level of validity too, right? If I walk into a room, the guy that was born here, raised here, went to high school here, suddenly like I might be okay.
Yeah, she's one of us.
So right, like I'm safe.
Well, you better just leverage it then.
Yeah, there you
go. So I moved up to the area in 2006. Followed a guy. I was coming off of a couple of years of active duty, and he suggested I move up here, and it was about 2013 when I moved over to Saranac Lake, and it was really the best thing I ever did for me and my daughter. I really enjoyed being in this community. I fled overseas and came back, and it was a great place to come back to. I think that I'm a calmer person, quite frankly, because I live in the Adirondacks. I grew up down by New York City, and I have to go back there. A period of time I was traveling back pretty frequently for work, and I realized I became, really by about day 3, like 48 hours, I was good to go. But after that, I feel like I became a pretty irritable person in New York City, right? It was just like too much stimulation and too many people. And so I think I'm a bit calmer. I'm a nicer person because I live in the Adirondacks.
I like that. Although I will say the one thing I've noticed on the flip side of that is living here lowers your tolerance for traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
agree.
Yeah.
Right.
So real quick, a little more on your background, if it's okay. So you said you've deployed, and so can you give us a little bit? So
I'm approaching 20. Well, I crossed the 20-year mark, so approaching 21 years of military duty, combination of active duty, National Guard, and most recently I returned from a deployment to the NATO headquarters in Kosovo. So that was a really different experience than I've ever had in the military previously. I was a U.S. soldier, but I was serving in multinational headquarters. So I could, my boss was from Germany. I worked with soldiers directly from Croatia and Turkey, Germany, Czech Republic, Ireland. It was very, very different cultures, different, ideas about the role of officers, the role of women. So it's a really unique experience.
There's a little bit of unrest right now. So you must watch that with some trepidation.
I do. And I think, right, like I'm tired Like I did my 20 years
Sure.
and I'm excited at the new generation of soldiers that are coming up, and I'm happy to sort of step aside and allow them to take the lead. In 2010, I deployed to Afghanistan. So I feel like, 2 combat tours and a couple of natural disasters, 1 stateside tour, like I'm content with my service and ready to, yes, I'm ready to see what the next chapter is. So looking at wrapping that up the next year or so.
Well, thanks for your service.
Absolutely.
Truly a pleasure.
Our versus personnel hear it a lot, but it's not enough. So in the meantime, you kind of come across this place and you start to get involved. I know you were involved in some things when you lived in the Placid, but I think one of the first times I met you was with Parks and Trails Advisory.
Yeah, I think so.
Right? So you were on the board.
Yes,
for a while.
I was.
I think one of the first members.
Well, and I think too, my daughter, I feel like they really wanted my daughter on the board, honestly, and I just kind of came along I think she had spoke at a meeting. I'm not sure what transpired, but yeah, so I've always been actively, I grew up in a home where community service took a lot of different forms, but it was a value that was really important. And I think that sort of stuck with me, and it's looked differently in different communities that I've lived in. So whether it was, volunteering at food pantries or soup kitchens, or whether it was, registering voters or working the polls, it's taken different forms in different communities that I've lived in. It was kind of interesting to me, actually, because in other communities, there was civic involvement without it being party-based. So you had like League of Women Voters, or when I was in California, the California State Social Studies Teacher Association, but like they did a huge voter registration drive under the idea of like social studies and civics, zero party affiliation in any way, shape, or form. But I found, for whatever reason, up here, getting involved in politics sort of means picking, Democrat or Republican. And so that was a little bit different, I felt like, for me being involved. We don't have League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan civic organization. We don't have an active chapter here, which is a program, I was involved with in Albany. So, but it always takes different forms in different communities that I live in.
So going back briefly to your military experience, and you're in Kosovo most recently, and you're at kind of a somewhat of a political position in what you were doing, and you're dealing with people from all over the world.
Yes.
Where you could probably not have more difference in personality, and yet you still find time and energy to be here and serve on the Harrietstown board. And I'm curious how that experience being overseas, dealing with a multicultural group of people, trying to solve, I won't say larger issues, but different issues, how that informs the work that you do here in dealing with people with different opinions. Because one thing we know about Saranac Lake is there's a lot of people here are passionate about their stuff. Everyone's got their thing or their things, and they are not shy about advocating for it, which makes this a great place, but also can make it's intense sometimes. Because if you put yourself in front of people and say, I'm going to be on this board or I'm going to lead this thing, people are going to let you know what they think.
I'm gonna create a mascot for Saranac Lake School District, right?
Biggest mistake of my life. No, just kidding.
So I think, yes, listening. I think the biggest thing is genuinely listening, right? Not just waiting not just waiting to speak, but sort of being able to come in a place where you're open to hearing what other people say. Some days I do that better than others, but I try really hard. And I also try to be as accessible as possible to someone on local government. I want people to genuinely feel and believe that the local government is working for them and working with them. And I feel like if I'm not accessible, then I can't do that. One of the things that we used to refer to when I was overseas. We called it the NATO nod. And it was, you've got 26 or 28 countries, 20 or so languages. And you would give a set of instructions and everyone would sort of nod their head and be like, oh, everyone understands. Okay? And then you would like ask yes or no questions and people say yes, yes. And you're like, oh, good to go. But then you ask an open-ended question and it's silent. And you realize nobody understood anything that I said. And so I think about that a lot, when I'm communicating, even though we all speak English, or the majority of people in our community do speak English as a first language and as a native speaker, is do you really understand where I'm coming from? And, are your values such that similar enough to my values that we're going to look at this situation the same, or are you just coming out of a completely different direction, right? Like I know my experiences are colored by the fact that I've spent lots of time in other cultures and other environments. They're colored by my daughter and her experiences in this community. And they're influenced, by my husband, like we talked about, right? He has this image in his mind of how things were at one point in time. All of those things influence how I look and see a situation. But if I'm talking to someone that doesn't have any of those shared experiences, I have to immediately recognize that their position is no more or less valid than mine, but it's going to be, it's going to be different.
Take more time to
right.
find some connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. I believe very strongly that there is more that unites us than divides us.
Sure.
And I feel like it's easy when you get so focused on your one issue to recognize that. But I believe that in my core.
And it seems like I think what I've seen, and then this isn't just Saranac Lake, but everybody gets passionate about stuff here, which is great, is figuring out how to compartmentalize, right? So there might be someone who the two of you will never see eye to eye on one thing, but she'll be in lockstep on another thing. It's such a small community that happens all the time. I don't know if you've experienced that, but I certainly have.
I have. And I think building relationships is key in a small town right? Nobody has to do anything in many situations that we find ourselves in the communities. But you want people to you want people to want to work with you to accomplish things. I think for me, one of the biggest compliments I received when someone said well, I saw, what you were doing on the town board and I wanted to be a part of that. Wow, that was truly one of the biggest compliments that anyone has ever paid me. To say I value what you're doing so much, I want to be a part of that.
Right. So I got a question about accessibility.
Okay.
Are you still doing Thursday night or Thursday afternoon?
Cookies.
I don't remember. Did you have a catchy name for it?
Well, it was cookies.
Cookies with the supervisor?
And coffee, or I never came up with a catchy name.
Okay, well,
but
maybe somebody out there is more creative than us. But tell us about that. And have you ever had anybody show up?
So, I've tried,
Was that a stop? Is that a ding? I don't know.
No, it's not a ding on her. It's more it might be a ding on the community, not taking advantage of the supervisor just sitting there waiting for them to come.
Yeah, so at one point I was doing it every week, and then I sort of settled down to once a month. And then I tried using other things besides cookies. We celebrated, I think it was National Blueberry Pie Day, and I made little mini blueberry pies. So I tried to use different things that are coming up. I don't often have people actually show up to the events, but I feel like people see them and know about them and appreciate that they could.
Right.
I definitely have gotten positive feedback from the community about oh, I saw you did that, and that was really exciting. I think with the summer, we're going to try some other things besides cookies. Maybe popsicles.
Those work with the photo. So
yes,
if you want 8 to 18-year-olds, then
popsicles I think might be a way to go.
So you mentioned your daughter, and so when you moved here, was she how old is she? So did she go to school here, or?
So when I moved to Saranac Lake,
Yeah.
so she was attending St. Agnes Elementary School
Okay.
when I moved over from Lake Placid, and so she stayed there through third grade, and then she finished out her last 2 years of elementary school at St. Bernard's.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm pretty excited. She's actually going to be starting at Clarkson University in the fall.
Oh,
so,
congratulations.
yeah.
Wonderful.
Far away, but not too
Sure.
Far enough.
Yeah.
Right. So
Everybody wins.
yes, no, she's excited, and
That's great.
I'm excited for her and the opportunities that will give her.
Congrats.
So you must, in you don't have to go into detail about it, but you could envision a life down in the city with her, and then you have the experience being here, and it must be like, those things you think about something bad that might have just happened, but it didn't, and it still makes you nervous, even though a different reality happened. I wonder, is that?
So you're like, what would my life be like?
Yes.
If I.
You're grateful that you're here
Thank you.
with her. She got to basically grow up here
Yes.
versus somewhere else.
I think for me, there's sort of two components to it. There's definitely times when I feel like my career was not on par with my peers because I made a decision to live in an area that had really different economic opportunities. So there were definitely times that I felt that, but then I also look at the quality of life more holistically than just sort of how we define success as a higher paying job and the accumulation of more stuff. And I recognize that I've come out ahead. And part of that is right, like I don't sit in traffic for however long that people in cities do. Dewey Mountain is out my backyard. I don't walk my dog down a sidewalk on a cement street, right? I walk her through beautiful trails and I see deer and I see squirrels and those kinds of things. I just don't think you can put a price tag on. And, I said I was a nicer person. I'll be honest, right? Like 2 combat tours, that took a toll. Sometimes I'm a little bit more irritable than the average human and a little bit more maybe on guard. And I feel like being able to maintain a steady connection to nature, it keeps me healthier. It keeps my brain a little bit more regulated and I'm a better person for it.
That's a good plug for the community at large. But you also had a good shameless Dewey Mountain Recreation Center plug, which we would expect out of a town supervisor who is in charge of owning and running said recreation
Dewey Mountain
center.
is such an incredible resource. And, at the town level, we've really worked hard to keep it accessible and affordable for families. We'll work with the school district to try to get kids on there as much as we can. We're constantly looking for additional opportunities to bring people there. It's to have something like that in our community, to have the lights, to be able to ski in the evenings there. It's such, I suspect some people here probably just take it for granted. Like, oh, we'll just head to Dewey. They don't realize there's people that don't have the ability to just throw on some skis and head out.
Right.
There's a lot that we talk about, we take for granted here that you don't realize until you leave. And so a lot of kids, myself growing up here, I can't wait to leave. And then you live in a lot of other places and you realize, so the many things we take for granted here are just, it's really what's, we've talked a lot about, you've said something before about like people have their different focuses, and I think a part of that is that, it exists everywhere, but like there's very different, like there's people here who came here to retire. There's people here who want to raise a family. There's people here who were born and raised and want to leave but can't for some reason. So you've got this small town of 5,000 people, this very eclectic group of people with very different visions of what Saranac Lake is, should be, could be, whatever. But there's really only, I think there's like this small number of folks who are kind of like seeing like these, like we want to maintain not taking it for granted. Like let's not take Dewey Mountain for granted. Let's not take Mount Pisgah for granted. All these things that we have, and it doesn't just happen. Like it takes people serving on committees and advocating and pushing things
Volunteering
out.
time,
Yeah.
volunteering,
So
donating money.
Yeah. And it's not, I think sometimes you think, oh, I'm so busy, right? Is anybody else even doing anything? But I really think there's just that much to be done. And there's,
Well, right.
there really is. And I think too, when I try to ask people to help or when I'm looking for volunteers, I try to be really specific in my ask and my expectations, exactly what I'm asking you to come to this event, to volunteer for this amount of time to do this task. Or I'm asking you to organize, this specific event in this time frame with these sets of tasks, leveraging these specific skills that you have. And I don't know, someone actually had said to me today, was questioning like how I managed to engage some other organizations that they had tried to engage in the past and been unsuccessful. And I sort of thought to myself, well, then, why is it that I was successful, and they weren't? And I do think it's because going back to that military experience, it's about building relationships, right? The military is one of the most diverse organizations in the world, whether you talk about socioeconomic backgrounds, religions, colors, sexual orientation, everything. But we all have a common mission. Like you got to get it done. Like regardless, you got to get it done, and you do that by building relationships.
All right. So let's talk about the town of Harrietstown.
Okay.
Because you're the supervisor. You were the town board member for how long?
I did 4 years.
4 years.
Full term.
Now you're into year 2.
Yes, of a 4-year term.
As supervisor. So Harrietstown's as far as within the Adirondack Park, a pretty big and complex organization, relatively speaking. I think we should talk about the airport.
Okay.
Because not every town owns and operates an airport.
This is true.
So what do you want to say about the airport?
Well, if you've never been out there, you got to go, first of all.
that's
If
breakfast
only
food.
because of the cafe.
The
Yeah,
breakfast is
absolutely. But
amazing.
it's closed on Monday.
Let's just be honest.
Don't go. Yeah, it's really.
Yeah.
It's good. I had that actually smoked salmon eggs Benedict was their special the other morning. It's pretty awesome. But so we have 2 flights that go to Boston and 1 to JFK, and those our current sort of ridership, we would say, exceeds our pre-COVID numbers, which is awesome. The Cape Air flight has been, now for over a year now, and that goes to JFK. Yeah, and that has just, we don't have less people going to Boston. It's the people going to Boston are on the 2 flights, and then we just increased our ridership with that JFK flight. And it really has, Cape Air is a great partner to have in the community. They are very generous. A lot of times you'll see, different organizations have raffles and other things. They're very generous and they're a great partner. We at the airport, so we have federal employees that run our TSA. We've got Cape Air as the employer. We've got the cafe. We've got the staff that the town hires. And then we've got the private flights that come in and out. And it's interesting. The economic impact of $1 spent in an airport ripples, throughout the community. So maybe it's the fuel sales, the employees that work at the camp that someone is flying to, the private camp. It's the donations that they invest, whether it's the Wild Center, the Medical Center, Trudeau, any of those places. And the company, the fuel company, they contribute to the community. We also house a state police aviation unit up there that's critical.
I think you should charge the state more. Much we should charge them.
Well, they lease a hangar.
Based on the budget they just passed, I think they could afford it. So I think you should raise the.
Oh yeah.
And where else are they going to go?
It's true. It's true.
You got a corner on the market.
Yeah. So, but if you've never been out to the airplane, it's also honestly some of the best sunsets I have ever seen. Not on top of a mountain, but have come at the airport. Just, I don't know, the combination of the sun and the open space or the light, or it just really gorgeous sunsets out there.
I mean, I always bring up stuff about, I try to always talk about kid stuff here. It's even a great place like just to bring kids. Like if you need something to do on a Sunday after whatever, like you can see what time the planes are arriving. And like we were having breakfast there recently, and like this the window, you know, facing the runway. I mean, every kid in that place left their table and just glued to the glass watching that plane come in. And they had a ball. And it's funny because we mentioned cafe. I don't think anywhere else in the world, if I land in like, I don't know, Nashville, where's the best breakfast spot? Oh, the airport. Like, no, like I'm not going to the airport. So
That's true.
it's, you know, it's really an amazing place beyond just the food. But,
Will there still be a great view of the runway from the cafe in the new dates? We need to talk about that.
Okay, yeah. So $8.5 million from the state of New York to renovate. Really excited. Solar panels, geothermal, which is exciting to be able to utilize, you know, that sustainability. And actually, the cafe will be on the second floor, and it will look out. So it'll be sort of on the opposite side of where it is now. There'll be an elevator, fully handicap accessible as well. And I think you're going to have, believe it or not, an even better view.
nice.
Out across the runway, the planes coming in. I think the renovation is really going to sort of capture. We're looking at, you know, floor to ceiling windows to really capture that Adirondack landscape. There's even a fireplace in the design.
So when was construction going to start?
So we're looking at breaking ground in the spring. We're still in the design phase, and you know, New York has a lot of requirements.
Red tape.
I
Yeah.
don't believe that.
I didn't know that. I was not aware of that.
So making sure that we fulfill all the different requirements that they're there. But we have a great team, our airport manager. He's phenomenal. The different companies that we work with, and our partners, the Department of Transportation and the FAA as well, have been super helpful. I feel like they're solution oriented because we've run into a few hiccups. You know, construction, supply. I mean, they're like, right? It's not a linear path. So I'm excited about it. Yeah, but we're looking at some sort of kind of groundbreaking, not breaking, right? Groundbreaking.
That's at the end.
Yes.
Okay.
Too. So I think we're looking at that sometime in the spring. You know, we also have an aviation school out at the airport. If you're interested in learning to fly,
How young? I don't remember how young kids.
you can get your airplane license before you get
Right.
your driver's license.
Right.
How-
flight hours?
So, all right, so some kid, because we have a ton of kid listeners, obviously, the teens are just glued to the screens when it comes to the podcast.
Yes, hundreds.
Yes.
of them are
The
listening.
whole high school.
Right.
So if I'm a kid in the community, I want to learn to fly.
Mm-hmm.
How long till I can fly? How much is it going to cost me?
I don't know all the details.
Okay.
I do know there is a program that will take you up in one flight around for free. You'd have to contact the airport and they can tell you about it. And we try to have events every so often where there's plane, you know, like sort of touch a truck, but touch a plane or touch a helicopter kinds of things. And we bring the community out. I'm hoping that when we do the groundbreaking, it's really going to be a celebration.
Yes.
That I'm sure we will have, you know, very important state officials that will come to be with us. But my hope is that it will really be for the community.
When you can hand them the new helicopter, state police helicopter.
Yes.
See what they can do. Yeah, that'd be.
It's very positive. We want to focus on that, but I think what the town board struggles with, I know that Corey, the airport manager, struggles with, and even taxpayers at times in the town struggle with, is that this is a town operation, and you do get contributions from some local municipalities. I think the counties and some of the towns.
Yes.
It's a big undertaking.
Yes, and we get a huge amount of money from the federal government as well. You know, the flights, the Cape Air flights, those are subsidized as part of Essential Air Services to make sure that people in rural communities can access significant transportation infrastructures to get where they need to go. this was a few years back, but I was told that if you were paying full price for that round trip ticket on Cape Air, it would be $500, and it was about $550. And that was a couple of years ago. So I'm sure now.
Anyone
it's gone.
who's a Red Sox fan going to Boston to watch a game should be charged that.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of time.
We are.
Did you see that? I don't know how we. Yeah,
Nailed it right there.
And we told you it would be fast.
Okay.
But I'm glad we got to talk about the airport.
And we'd love to have you back. There's a lot more we can talk to you about. And
Sure.
so,
You don't have to tell. You don't have to commit right now.
yes.
Just
Okay.
On it.
Okay.
It's like I'm not sure, or
She's
maybe
gonna lose our
we'll.
number.
No, I'm happy to come back and talk more in the future.
Great,
Well, we always appreciate guests coming on, giving us your time.
especially when they don't know what they're.
Exactly.
for.
Just saying yes, and I'll figure out what I'm doing when I get there.
Yeah.
So, well, this was episode 25, the Sterling Effect Show. By this time, everyone knows where they can see/hear us. All the usual places: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, all of it. We have a YouTube channel. If you want to contact us, StareneckLakeEffectShow@gmail.com. If you want to be a guest. And miss anything? Got
Very
it.
good.
Okay. Until next time.